Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so excited to be here. And as it was mentioned, my name is Oleksandr Kravchuk, and I'm from Ukraine. Probably someone could have a question, how this guy is supposed to be here if a man of his age is not allowed to leave the country? Well, that happens that this photo was taken 21st of February 2022, just 3 days before Russian invasion to Ukraine. Here I am preparing to climb Kilimanjaro mountain in Tanzania. By the way, we succeed. And with this, I could share 3 facts. First one, that they weren't just words when I told that I'm so excited to be here. The second one, that I'm pretty good in selecting dates for my vacation. And the third one, that it was the best vacation in my life so far, even if it was the worst. And while millions of Ukrainians all around the world are waiting for one day to return back under peaceful Ukrainian sky, and meet their friends, family members, and personally, I would be really happy to finally see and pet my dog. I would like to say thank you to people of United States and to the global community for supporting Ukraine in such a dark time. So, a bit more why you should trust and think that I'm going to tell next. Besides few certificates and SME status for Adobe Commerce Architect exam, I'm working as Magento department manager at vConnect and responsible for management development processes in the company. I also taking responsibility of consulting business for technical implementation of their business desires. I also had a kind of solid experience with contributing to Magento 2 core. Also one of the core contributor to buy online pickup in store Magento 2 features and the Magento community maintainer and master maker 2020. So what 2022 brought to us in case of Adobe Commerce or Magento releases? First of all, we faced end of life for all versions below 2.4.4, and now we are continuing with 2 patch versions being supported. And this is the right time to answer on the question, why actually you should upgrade, why merchants should invest their money to keep their store up to date. Overall, it comes with the security. According to IBM report, the global average loss caused by data breaches for a single organization for the last year caused $4.35 million. And according to Verizon report, the exploit vulnerabilities in web applications remain top 2 reason to be data breached. So I guess it worth it. The next reason is new features being usually introduced with new patch versions. However, Adobe is working in the way to make this process separately from the Magento releases, and we could expect to receive new features without actually forcing to upgrade your Magento. Most of third-party extension vendors, they aim to support the latest Magento version. Also, when you install new patch version, you also receive dozen bug fixes and performance improvements, and also new tools which could simplify and speed up development process. And if you're using Adobe Commerce support, then most likely you will need to remain on the supported Adobe Commerce version, or you will need to pay extra for extended support program. Before this talk, I have argued with my friend if actually upgrades is still a big issue for community, if community still struggle with it. And we arranged a poll in Twitter, and according to 77 replies, 85% of respondents consider that yes, Magento upgrade is still an issue for community. And unfortunately, I won't be able to provide you any kind of silver bullet that could solve all of your Magento upgrade issues. And this is not because Ukrainians need more ammo, this is rather because Magento community is 10,000 people around the world, and I would imagine that there will be some smart guy who will do it much earlier. But we still could talk about things that could increase or decrease your upgrade time. And let's start from the beginning, from what parts usually upgrades consist from. First of all, it's in infrastructure. For example, if you're using Magento above 2.4.4, then most likely you'll need to adjust your infrastructure to use PHP 8.1. Then the platform upgrade itself. Interesting, but from experience, the time required to upgrade the platform is around 10% from overall Magento upgrade time. Then they come third-party extensions, your customizations of the platform, your customizations of third-party extension, and user interface. From experience, the average amount of hours required to upgrade Magento is around 5% from development budget. So for 5 key hours project, it's around 250 hours for patch upgrade. But this correlation doesn't imply causation. Again, from experience, 2 different projects, they had similar budget, not small budget, and time required to make the patch upgrade was significantly different. So there should be something else. And let's talk about things that could increase or decrease the upgrade time. The first thing which negatively impact on upgrade time is postponing upgrades. Overall, this happens because each Magento patch version comes with a set of backward incompatible changes. And if you need to make upgrade for a few in the one time, then you will need to accumulate and deal with them in the scope of a single project. It will also most likely require you to make a more significant leap for upgrading third-party extensions. And if you have some simultaneous development on that time, it most likely will cause you to build it on the older Magento version and then adjust it to the new one. So I recommend to consider upgrade not like a one-time action, it's rather a process. You always need to do it, and you need to consider it as a price that you pay for using Magento open source or Adobe Commerce. Then find motivation, define business value that this particular patch version could bring to the business, and then allocate budget, and using Adobe Commerce release schedule, you can find the right time for making upgrade, maybe somewhere between sales. And I recommend to be ready to at least one annual upgrade during the year, with probably skipping one patch release, which could be during this year, but always install latest security patches. So if we look into map starting from beginning 2022, for those merchants who already upgraded to 2.4.4, they should prepare themselves to start upgrade to 2.4.6 in the March later this year. And for 2023, we could see that the release cycle is being slowed down a while, and for those merchants who already on 2.4.5, most likely they should prepare themselves to upgrade to 2.4.7 in the end of this year, or maybe even the beginning of the next year. The next thing related to overuse of third-party extensions. Nowadays, Adobe Extensions Marketplace has around 3,500 extensions available to install. And you know, they like illegal. Sometimes you can just collect them together and you will be happy with the result. And sometimes they could hurt you and hurt your business. Overall, it happens because each third-party extension you install, it has maintenance cost. Whatever you need to upgrade it, or maybe sometimes need to fix some bugs or make performance improvements if vendor cannot help with it. Then if you have many third-party extensions, you also could have conflicts that you will need to deal with. And each third-party extension is basically code, and adding more code to your project creates more complexity and more spaces where things could go wrong. Make an extension inventory. Just sit down, write all extensions that you have, and define that what business value they bring into you. If there's no business value, that maybe you just don't need them. Try to avoid installing many third-party extensions for the same functional area, if this area is not supported. For example, if you have many payment methods, most likely everything will be fine. But if you install 2 or 3 extensions for extending layered navigation, then most likely you will have conflicts and you will need to deal with them every time you upgrade these extensions. Use only trusted vendors, for example, from Adobe Commerce, Adobe Marketplace. And I guess most of agencies, they have own blacklist or whitelist of vendors and extensions they could recommend you or not recommend you to install. And yeah, if vendor is not supporting the extension, don't use it, otherwise it will be your headache to maintain it. Next thing related that many developers, project managers, business analytics, and sometimes merchants, they consider if they could install extension, then customize it, add even more features, then they will receive the cheapest possible solution for meeting business needs. Unfortunately, experience shows that in 2 or 3 years timeline, this solution will be more expensive rather than proceed with a custom development. Overall, it happens because the majority of third-party extension is not supposed to be extended. They are built to sold it to you, and it's a really, really rare case when the vendor is thinking about how you are going to extend them. They also have much shorter release cycle usually, and they introduce more often backward incompatible changes in comparison with Magento. And you will need to deal with a thing that I call 3-way dependencies, a bit more about it. So imagine that you have your Magento, you have extension installed, and you build the customizations for it. So if you upgrade the third-party extension, then your customizations could become broken. If you upgrade Magento, then again, your customizations could become broken because it depends on the Magento platform. And because you upgrade Magento, then most likely you will need to upgrade third-party extension to make it compatible with new Magento version. And it again creates a reason why your customizations could become broken. So you're receiving like a 3 scenario where your code could become broken. And for example, if you just extend in Magento, there will be only one. And this is literally a trap, and we had experience where we are forced to rebuild our customizations from scratch just because vendor decided to change architecture of their extension, whatever it happened because of refactoring of the extension or because to meet requirement of new Magento version. Try to negotiate with vendor. Maybe they would agree to build your desired feature and take support for it. If not, just proceed with a custom development. It will be much more expensive in the beginning, but it will save a lot of hours during maintenance. And if it's possible, just consider moving somewhere outside of Magento. Maybe it could be a separated service or application. The next thing related to Magento frontend. Well, nowadays we can use Magento with a headless approach. It's when the application for front-end, responsible for front-end, is being totally separated from Magento and communication happens via API. Example of it is PWA Studio and Vue Storefront, and actually many other solutions. And the monolith. Monolith is when the front-end code is being directly integrated into Magento platform code base. Examples, Luma theme or Huva theme or Hiva, whatever you like. If we will look into this chart, especially for the monolith, and we will look deeper into a user interface section, you will find that basically the same kind of structure of complexity and things that could require to be upgraded and which come with corresponding problems that could happen during the upgrade. And unfortunately, Luma theme show worse result in this case in comparison with alternatives. Overall, because outdated stack of technology, in addition with extreme complexity, cause slow development of new features and very expensive maintenance of them. Think twice before actually using Luma. Try to avoid using third-party themes that are built upon of Luma. That was literally the worst experience I even had. And try to avoid heavy customizations of UI, which has been provided by third-party extensions. And if it's possible, go headless. That will save a lot of hours on maintenance, especially during an upgrade. And we had cases when the upgrade of the front end was only around 40% from overall upgrade budget. The next thing related to development team setups and problems that they could have in scope of the upgrade. Well, overall, the most common team setups is in-house team when the business, the merchant itself, are hiring or outstaffing developers, and the important part, the development processes and being established inside the company. Then there could be service integrators or agencies and could provide with a dedicated team or shared team depending on size and needs, and freelancers, some guys that could be hired to make some work. Problems with these setups. So with in-house team, there will be most likely an issue to build a process for upgrade, and you will most likely need to deal with upgrade issues on your own. With freelancers, there will be a limited experience with your project. Of course, if not that guy who built your project from the scratch, and there will be always limited responsibilities. With dedicated team, most likely there will be higher price rate, and with shared team, besides that, it will be sometimes even more higher price rate. There could be things called experience entropy. That happens because some agencies, they're consolidating their risks and making the different developers working on the project in different moments of time. That result that the team in general know the project, but if you take the particular person, he knows only part of it, so he will need some time to get into it before proceeding with upgrade. And also important thing could happen and impact on the upgrade time is loss of key resources, or a change of a service integrator, which I call changes in the development team. And it will definitely cause loss of business and project-related expertise, and will dramatically increase legacy of the project. And merchant will need to invest into onboarding and transferring the information to a new team. If you need to establish a upgrade process, you can use Adobe Commerce Upgrade Guide. It's pretty nice. Arrange sharing knowledge in cross-development team. Avoid situation when the only one person know everything about the project. Otherwise, loss of this person could be unrecoverable for development team. And documentation can be very useful in this case. Limit usage of temporary resources for building new features, or otherwise consider that his experience won't be lost when he will finish his work. And upgrade should be, of course, led by developers who know the project. Next thing related to technical debt. I guess most of you know this game. For those who don't, just briefly through it. So this game consists from a wooden tower which built from a wooden bricks, and players one by one, they are borrowing wooden tower from the bottom and putting it on the top of the tower. And game continue until tower become too fragile and could collapse with some inaccurate move. And this is basically what happened with the project if you just just adding new features for it without resolving technical debt which these features creates. And technical debt usually start from phrases like, we do not have time to refactor it now, let's do it after release. Or, we cannot increase estimate, we already sold it to the client. Let's proceed with it, let's do what we can in scope of current budget. Or, if we would know all details from the beginning, that we will do things differently. And this is usually happens. When you start your journey, you know much less in comparison what you know in the end of your journey. And symptoms of technical debt could be high cost of implementation of new features, especially in comparison with the beginning of the project, some recurring issues that root cases you cannot solve for a while. You'll have high overhead in comparison with the initial estimate for features implementation, and most likely you'll have flooded application logs with error and critical entries. These charts show how usually development costs change with the time if you are not resolving technical debt, and if you're making recurring investment into resolving it, you'll receive kind of roller coaster. The best thing would happen with fixing technical debt is actually not introduce more technical debt. For this, it may require changes in the development process and start using Magento best practices, technical guidelines, develop with upgradability in mind, have senior resources in the team, make code review, and use static analysis tool for it. It will dramatically decrease the amount of technical debt which is being produced by dev team. Then, when there is technical debt already available on the project, then you probably could arrange recurring technical debt audit just to define what problems do you have and how many hours it will require to spend them. Then prove it to the business, explain the business case and benefit that it will bring to the business, and this is usually what the most developers have issue with. And then have recurring sprints with solving this technical debt. And special type of technical debt I also would like to mention is a legacy. Whatever it happened because using of deprecated Magento 2 functionality, or because of third-party libs or extensions that are not being supported by their vendors, or third-party extensions and customizations that lost business values, or it could be from codebase which has been inherited from previous development team. I recommend to consider legacy as a part of the technical debt and deal with it correspondingly by recurring sprints. Then use upgrade compatibility tool to avoid introducing new dependencies on deprecated Magento 2 functionality. Make inventory of your customizations and third-party extensions. If some of them lost business value, just remove them. If some of them require better support, you try to find alternatives. Sometimes it could be useful to invest into discovering inherited code base, and if you need to isolate some code which is supposed to be refactored in future, you can use anti-corruptional layer pattern. A bit more about it. It could be introduced by adding a simply module which will provide service contracts for all new code which has been introduced on the project, and under the hood it will call old code. So when time will come and you'll have more time, you can deal with the old code, resolve it, and all the new code will remain unchanged because it depends on abstraction. Next thing related to patches. If you're for a while with Magento community, probably you know this guy. This is Ben Mark. He was Magento community legend so far, and he did kind of meme video why you shouldn't edit code in Magento 1 core. And with Magento 2, things became more sophisticated and ways of editing core became more sophisticated. Now they call it patches. Problem of patches is that they introduce dependencies on specific line in specific file, and if this file is being changed, then most likely patch need to be adjusted. And if you would imagine that Magento upgrade come with 10,000 changed files, and you have many patches, imagine that Magento upgrade come with 10,000 changed files, and you have many patches, then most likely you will have a lot of work to do. And of course, if you are changing Magento behaviorist patches, you create risks of incompatibility with third-party extensions. Never use patches to add new features or to change Magento behavior. Use only official patches provided by Adobe Support or Quality Patches tool or taken from GitHub to repository. Overall, it's because these patches will become part of the core code in future, and you not need to adjust them. You will be able just to simply delete them. And if you developed some awesome bug fix to Magento 2 core, then just contribute it. Then you, your team, and 10,000 people around the world will say thank you for your contribution. The last but not least thing is considering Magento 2 as the core of your business. 2 is complex, but how is? We decided to make a crazy experiment and build our company site on Magento 2. We decided to remove anything else and try to stick with Magento framework, admin panel, some CMS and marketing stuff, and use Hua theme for it. We ended up on removing almost 2/3 from all Magento open source modules and left with 119 modules. In those modules remain catalog, quote, checkout, payment, shipping, tax, sales, customer, and search functionality. So this means that after removing 2/3 of all Magento 2 code base, you will still remain with a store that could receive and process orders. And having all of this complexity in one place sometimes could be even more crazy, try to add more. And even if business will evaluate, will evolve, and will start using more services and move some of business processes outside of Magento, sometimes you can stuck with the complexity of integrating these services inside of Magento. This chart we built for one of our clients. This is basically on the high level, it's alternative to Adobe I/O. The reason because this client is using Magento open source, and it's built in a center with Azure Service Bus and Azure Functions. Overall, this ecosystem could be called event-driven and data-driven, because each parts of this ecosystem, they are responsible to process the business flow that they're supposed to work with, and they're responsible to provide corresponding data to the ecosystem that it could be distributed through other services. For example, Magento 2 is responsible for providing orders, products, customer, and behavioral information to the ecosystem, and then it being distributed through all parts of it. And this is also could be called a composable commerce, because in any moment of the time, you can just replace the service with another one, with a better one. And the only would require is to actually make the same business value for this service, we make the same business value for the business, and send the same information to the ecosystem that it expects from this service. And this is important to remember that Magento 2, when the business is become bigger, Magento 2 will remain like just a customer journey. It will be customer experience, which should lead your customer from point A to point B when he comes to the site and when he commits transaction and places an order. Some references on resources, and thank you very much for your attention. I really appreciate it. And Q&A.
Any questions? Yeah, I guess you've pretty much covered all bases. Like, I had a few questions before you started talking, but when you're finished, I have none. Probably only one. Like you mentioned, of course, we want to avoid having like customizations, stuff like that. But how do you explain this to the business if they say, okay, we have this like business model and we need this functionality?
Well, it definitely depends on the case, but overall, you can just show them numbers. Because usually business, they are thinking that, okay, we need to implement something, okay, we need to spend, I don't know, 50 hours on it, and here we go. But if you have a look in like 2 or 3 years term, that these 50 hours will turn in 300 hours in maintenance, sometimes they will change their mind.
Okay, thank you. And let us all thank Oleksandr for his wonderful presentation. And we can take a break.